It's now time for your Election Crimes Bulletin with Greg Palast.
And this is Dennis Bernstein with Greg Palast. This is your weekly Election Crimes Bulletin that we do every Thursday with our good friend and contributor Greg Palast. Greg, there's a lot to talk about, but just a sort of a quick we told you so. It seems as though this Florida operation, this national security investigation, is going down that black hole of national security. And once again, the focus is going on other investigations that will not be lost in endless appeals that could go all the way to the Supreme Court. And as we know, while Donald J. Trump has trouble hiring good lawyers, he has no problem getting judges to dance to his music. So just in a word or two, where are we in Florida land in the abyss of national security?
Well, let's keep in mind, not only did Trump appoint the judges as president, but his lawyer, Roy Cohn, was the guy who had his hand in basically was able to veto any judge he didn't like sitting on the bench for many years in New York and beyond. So Trump has always had a kind of legal past that none of you that normal mortals don't have. But what I'm concerned with on the national security issue is that it's a national security issue. We are getting away from overturning an election, and the media is doing the easy story because they want to go from press releases, what the Justice Department said, and then, here's crazy Trump's reply, etc. That's easy journalism. No one's asking or investigating what could be in those documents. And that's important because we really do need to, in fact, instead of having a master saying, well, this should be top secret and this shouldn't be, etc., the question is, these are all our documents. It's a government of the people and by the people. And I want to know what's in those documents. If, for example, we do know that there were 2 impeachment hearings. First one, in which Trump was accused of muscling Ukraine, which has become kind of a serious matter of threatening to withhold military support if they didn't go after, do some kind of fake trial or investigation of Hunter Biden. And I would like to know whether what Trump did was spear away boxes of material which he had withheld from Congress during the impeachment hearings on Ukraine. That's kind of a serious matter. The second, and what about those documents about Ukraine? The second is the second impeachment trial. To what extent was the president actually involved in the planning of setting up an illegal operation to have alternative delegates? This is very different than saying, I don't agree with the vote and I challenge the vote and the big lie and, whether he should be removed from Twitter. I'm talking about whether he was actively involved in this planning and whether you can take the evidence of criminality and simply mark it top secret and it gets put away. I mean, so I'm less concerned about these being national security documents than these being important American documents for possible prosecution and a review of what happens. And no one seems to be going after the substance. It's all about national security. And I'm sorry, I've never been a big fan of those as a journalist, as an investigative journalist.
Well,
I've never been a big fan of
that's
these
what blows my mind.
Designations, right?
Greg, that's what blows my mind because you really do see these so-called reporters, whatever pundits, acting like either stenographers for the State Department or the Defense Department, and it's like, I don't want to see. I'm a journalist, but I don't want to see these documents that may tell me some crucial information about the way in which the United States government is treating its own people or other people, might have something to do with foreign policy, getting involved in illegal wars. We've seen a lot of these kind of fake operations backed up by, didn't we get into the Iraq war? I think Joe Biden supported that, but I want to mention that. Didn't we get the wrong information and go to war? The wrong secret information?
Yeah.
How many times?
Yeah, exactly. This is a good time to have a discussion about the value of massive secrecy in what is supposed to be an open government. And I'm very concerned because, after all, what is what was Chelsea Manning charged with and convicted of, and what is Snowden facing prison, and of course Assange facing a life in prison, supposedly for revealing secrets. But what they're doing is they're revealing truth that our government is hiding from us. One thing I did, because I spent a lot of time with the WikiLeaks documents, I did not find one sentence in any of them, and I went through thousands and thousands of pages and got tremendous stories about what our government hid from us. What I didn't find in a single page was anything which compromised national security or the safety of, say, some foreign agent or officer. There was nothing like that. So what we have is a government, and now I'm concerned that the subliminal message about Trump secreting the papers at Mar-a-Lago is that the concern is not that he is hiding the truth from the public, but that he is somehow going to reveal some secrets. Suddenly the press is the defender of secrecy, and the role of the press is to defend openness. So the question is, from a public policy view and from a journalist view, what Trump has done is hiding the truth in the basement or in his closet in Mar-a-Lago. It's not about, oh my gosh, he had some top secret document that one of his Russian residents at Mar-a-Lago playing golf will sneak in and capture. I really don't care. Okay, I think that most of the world knows that we have nukes. We can blow them. So the press is going for the easy story, and as opposed to trying to do the digging to find out what's in those papers, and are they important to the public, not whether they're top secret, but whether it's a secret of the government being withheld from us.
Sunlight is disinfectant. Could you imagine somebody hands one of these dudes the Pentagon Papers, the modern version, and they say, oh, this is a government document. I better go right back and give it back. I don't even want to see it. I'm covering my eyes because I don't want to see what the U.S. government or any government is up to.
This is very important. There's no doubt in my mind that if Daniel Ellsberg went to the New York Times or Washington Post today with the Pentagon Papers, they'd say, sorry, that's secret documents. We cannot reveal government secrets. See, it's marked top secret, Mr. Ellsberg. It would not happen today. There is it's not, I wouldn't even call it complicity. I call it a love affair between the national security agencies and our press. And of course, part of it is that they drip feed them what they like. So people, I know in Washington, there's this whole issue of they want access. So they get a couple tidbits, very selective. And, we saw it finally hit bottom, actually, during the war in Iraq when Judith Miller was embedded at the Pentagon from the New York Times. And the key thing is the Times did not say that she was embedded and being given BS, where she was writing articles saying, the government's not telling you, that in fact Saddam's weapons of mass destruction are worse than they're even revealing. So it's, I'm very concerned about this new system of in which journalists are going out of their way to protect national security. That's not our job. Our job is to reveal the truth, and sometimes it's difficult, and frankly, sometimes it's even dangerous. After all, Daniel Ellsberg was revealing the entire analysis of the war in Vietnam while it was on. If you could ever make a case that someone was endangering lives of our soldiers by revealing secrets, it was Daniel Ellsberg. But at least we had finally a judge who said, we don't have an Official Secrets Act in the United States. So, again, we're bringing up this issue of distraction. I mean, should Donald Trump be allowed to just deep six files, secrete them? Again, I want to know what's in those empty folders that they found. But I'm more concerned about not whether it reveals our nuclear secrets. I doubt if Donald Trump has taken that stuff or even knew he had that stuff. I suspect that it has a lot to do with the 2 impeachment hearings and what was withheld from us. And that's what we need to know. I'd like that stuff made public, not determine whether it's top secret or not.
Absolutely. I'm all for that. You're listening to the Election Crimes Bulletin on Flashpoints with Greg Palast. Greg, now let's turn our attention back to Georgia, to Atlanta, to what's going on the ground there. The Senate race has gotten very close. And, I don't have to tell you, the closer the race gets, the easier it is to steal.
Okay, so again, I know we keep going back to Georgia. And I'd like not to, by the way. If you think I like flying to Georgia every year for the past 9 years, it's just that that's where the GOP takes out its vote suppression tricks for a test drive, and where it's most significant. It is the swing state of America. Right now, Senator Warnock, Reverend Warnock, is, depending on which poll, either 2 points behind Herschel Walker, the Republican Trump-backed candidate, or he's a point ahead of Herschel Walker. In other words, it's a statistical dead heat. If Warnock loses, the Senate goes Republican. Stacey Abrams is also in a statistical heat with Kemp, though sometimes people think she's a little down. That's all the horse race stuff, which you and I do not spend a lot of time on. And the only reason I bring it up is your point, is that the closer the race, the easier it is to steal. We have to be careful about using the term steal these days because you'll get taken off the air.
Yes.
But it is. But, Dennis, when your car is stolen, you don't say, my car has been suppressed. My car has been suppressed. No, it's been stolen. So if they suppress your vote. So now what's happening in Georgia, I've been focusing on that. In fact, we'll have a film about called Vigilante, Georgia's Vote Suppression Hitman, October 19th at the Grand Lake, which will be a fundraiser for KPFA. We'll also do a similar one for KPFK. If you're listening, stay tuned on that. But the important thing is that it's gotten pretty horrible. Right now, 37,000 voters. 37,000 voters were just challenged by a group called Vote GA, which is for Georgia, Vote Georgia. If you remember Michael Flynn, the national security advisor under Agent Orange, he and his brother have created this group. They've challenged 37,000 voters in a single county, Gwinnett, which is a county which is kind of changing white to black, and a suburb of Atlanta. 37,000 voters in one county, and they're planning other challenges. Now, what does that mean to challenge a voter? They're saying they're handing in literally spreadsheets to the county government saying, don't count these people's votes, which is allowed under the new law signed by Governor Brian Kemp, SB 202 last year, which allows any individual voter to challenge an unlimited number of voters. Because most of America, in fact, most of the South, has always had this kind of vigilante vote challenge law where I can say, Dennis Bernstein doesn't live in California, don't let him vote. But what makes SB 202 new and dangerous in this election is that one person can challenge an unlimited number. That woman that you heard screaming at me, she personally challenged 32,000 voters, and she said it was so expensive and difficult to print it out that she just handed in a thumb drive. These guys are literally handing in electronic spreadsheets with voters, mostly of color. Now, here's the thing: how do you get your vote back? You find, if you're lucky enough to find out you've been challenged. And remember, if you're challenged on Election Day, how do you find out you've cast your ballot? How do you know it's been challenged? Or you've mailed in your ballot or put it in a drop box. How do you know it's been challenged? You're supposed to get a postcard, looks like junk mail, and then you have 10 days to show up at a court-like hearing to prove you are who you are. But this challenge list, just so you know, was created by a guy named Garland Favorito, working with Michael Flynn. And we had a guy named Zach Roberts. When you said it's a one-man election operator, no, it isn't. It's the whole House investigative team, and our undercover specialist is Zach D. Roberts, who he has another legal name, and he actually took training from Garland Favorito on how you knock off voters. So we got inside. By the way, when you talk about journalism, I did have a bureau chief from the New York Times said, if you work for the New York Times and you did that, we'd fire you. At BBC, I would get a promotion because they said if you need a story and you have to go inside, going undercover is almost stopped happening in the United States. When was the last time you heard of a major undercover investigation by any major news outlet in the U.S.? I did at BBC all the time. And for the Guardian, that was, in fact, it was required. If you couldn't get the information through the front door, you had to go inside and get it. Now, so we do that, and we found out that the methods that they were using were beyond ridiculous, but they, from the point of view of fair voting, that is, they're removing voters, legal voters, or challenging clearly legal voters, including, as we know, they seem to specialize on identifying African American soldiers who are assigned elsewhere, who are out, so they ask for an absentee ballot. But they've also put in change of address forms because they're assigned for a few months to, say, as we know, one soldier, Fort Hueneme, California, where a Georgia military career officer, his vote was challenged because he was assigned to Fort Hueneme. So they use these change of address forms put in by black soldiers and other vulnerable voters. And all the soldier had to do, he called up. He found out, he was lucky because he called up and found out that he was challenged because he was looking for an absentee ballot, didn't arrive. And they said, well, you've been challenged. You can't get your ballot, but you can, well, what do I do? Oh, no problem, just come in. He says, I'm 2,600 miles away. I'm 26. You want me to come in? Yes, that's what the law absolutely requires. Now, very important to know that we're also looking at challenges in Texas and Florida. If you remember, there was that other right-wing group, True the Vote, which had put in 364,000 challenges. Several thousand of those are still live. And again, the closeness of the race means that, put it this way, it's real simple. We all know that Joe Biden won Georgia officially by less than 12,000 votes. You knock off 37,000 black voters in just Gwinnett, that's the state.
Can both sides do these challenges? Why wouldn't the Democrats be challenging their butts off? I guess that just ends the nature of the election. Everybody's challenging. Well, can't the Democrats? I'm going to challenge these 3,500 people. These. And on it goes.
Or as the Republicans did, 364,000 voters. This is no joke going on here. This is big, big, big. It's not small stuff. And,
but both sides have the possibility.
Why don't the Democrats do it? Why don't the Democrats do it?
Yeah, that's the question
we get. I'm glad that they don't. I don't give them advice, but I don't think that we should have a vote suppression Olympics in Georgia. And I hope that what the Democrats will do is two things, or any voting rights group, because I don't talk to Democrats, but I work with the voting rights group like Black Voters Matter and New Georgia Project, which it's pretty funny. I mean, believe me, you could have quite an Olympic. Brian Kemp would win the gold medal, so there's no sense even entering the contest.
That's really not hyperbole, is it? As our president might say every day.
So one of the problems one of the things to recognize here, and I wanted to give a little history, because it's always important to know what the history is. Brian Kemp did not invent the voter challenge, nor did Michael Flynn and his Voter Georgia group with their literally hundreds of thousands of challenges. It was the first mass challenge of voters was conducted by a guy named Eugene Talmadge, who was running for governor of Florida. He'd already been governor, he was rerunning, and Franklin Roosevelt had promised voters, black soldiers, that when they returned to Georgia, they would be allowed to vote. So he used the same challenge method used by Brian Kemp, Talmadge, but he told his backers, at that time that was the Ku Klux Klan, he was their candidate, to challenge black voters, and they filled out mimeo sheets. But at the time, they only challenged one or two voters at a time because they didn't have computers. They hadn't gone like Brian Kemp and his buddies into cyberspace to challenge tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. But they filled out so many forms that in many counties, the FBI came down and investigated. Now, that's very interesting. Unlike now, the FBI is going to Mar-a-Lago instead of Georgia, instead of investigating the mass challenges in Georgia. But in 1946, after Roosevelt died, Truman's FBI came down and ran a massive investigation in Georgia and said every single black voter in some of these counties has been challenged, even though the challenger doesn't even know who this black person is. And that's the woman who threw me out of her house when I said, do you know any of these 32,000 people? I even gave her some of the names because I had their photos. I had talked to them. And by the way, I put one of them on the phone to her. I said, have you spoken to them? You know these people? No, I don't know them. At 1946, the FBI recommended the indictment of Talmadge. He did win the governorship through this gimmick. It was a tightly fought race. Believe it or not, there was his Democratic challenger, because it was only, it was all primaries in Georgia. His Democratic challenger actually believed that black people, that especially returning soldiers, had a right to vote. But he lost because of this challenge game. The FBI, we just got the 800-page file from the FBI, and the FBI said, indict him for mass felony interference with voting, because even before the Voting Rights Act, this game was illegal. It was a direct violation of the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, which we won with 600,000 dead Americans. So they were going to indict him in 46. So where is Garland? Where is our current AG right now? If they could indict the Georgians for these racist challenges in 46, why not the challenges in 2022?
Well, that's a good question, Greg. We're running out of time, so let's maybe we can conclude with a sort of a brief background reminder on the DA's case, because that's a real live wire case, possible RICO. Remind people what that's about.
Okay, so we now have Fannie Willis, the district attorney for Fulton County, which is most of Atlanta, has impaneled a grand jury with the approval of Republican judges. Just so you're clear on this, it's not because she's been accused of that this is all political hatchet job. Right. It was Republican judges who impaneled a grand jury. We're looking into whether Trump or associates, including Rudy Giuliani, True the Vote, and Operative Cleta Mitchell, and others, Lindsey Graham, improperly attempted to influence and interfere with the election by creating a list of alternative electors who were never ran for election, that is to represent a presidential candidate. It's a crime. It's a felony, go-to-jail crime. So that's continued. The one thing is, as you know, we've talked about it, Governor Brian Kemp was subpoenaed, and he did every type of rain dance, somersault. It was quite a jiggle contest there with Brian Kemp, avoiding speaking to the grand jury, even though he's just a witness. Fannie Willis even said you could testify by Skype, believe it or not, with his lawyer next to him. This is never done to accommodate him, because he says, well, I'm running for, re-election. I don't have time, which is a whole new, interesting argument. A judge said, and we're going to hold his deposition before the grand jury's testimony until after the election. And I'm concerned about that, because the truth is, I think if the guy is running for governor, we should know what he knows about interference in Georgia's elections and whether he participated and what happened. I think that the voters of Georgia really ought to know what happened in his calls with President Trump. Did he really say, no, I'm not going to change the vote, or did he really say, I'll just call the guy who works for me down the hall the Secretary of State, because then Trump called the Secretary of State? I would like to know, I think that the Georgia voters need to know, what does Brian Kemp know and when did he know it? The question we used to ask about Richard Nixon during Watergate. But we will not get that answer, because he won't be required to testify until after the election. And this is slowing up the whole process of a potential indictment against those involved. But it's a very serious case, and unlike the federal government, Fannie Willis is not a political operative, and they are less restricted in Georgia by the rule that the Justice Department put upon itself that it can't bring prosecutions which may in some way influence the outcome of an election. But think about that. That's kind of odd. If someone is a criminal, let's say that Donald Trump is found to be a criminal, well, then we kind of ought to know that if he's going to run for re-election.
One would hope.
Information should be public. It's not about influencing the election. It's about providing information to the public making a decision on an election. And that's what I'm very concerned with, this new business of saying we're not going we're not going to investigate politicians, basically, or especially if they're running for office. They got some type of get out of jail free pass, or at least.
Well, and it really, Greg, it's a perversion. It's a perversion of something that made a little bit of sense in terms of, there's all kinds of gotcha possibilities with fake news stories that you could go after politicians. You do it a week before the election, and who knows if it's true, it's not true. I mean, there is something to that, but they've taken that idea and really used it. Oh, you tried to overthrow the government, you killed 7 cops. But you're running for an election. Okay, we'll get into that later. So that's where we are.
I thought, it's being used weirdly as a shield when it was supposed to be used to prevent manipulation of elections by rogue prosecutors. Instead, it's become a strange shield, which is widening. And again, we go back to the idea: what should a voter be allowed to know? Oh, we'll tell you later whether you voted for a criminal. Really? That's our new standard.
Outrageous.
I'm getting very concerned about this new politician protection racket.
All right, that's Greg Palast. He's reachable always at gregpalast.com. He's working on a powerful new film. We're all very excited about that. We're going to be a part of a special presentation. We'll tell you more about that coming up in October. Greg Palast, please stay safe and keep the good information coming in for the Election Crimes Bulletin with Greg Palast at gregpalast.com. Stay safe, Greg.
I'll try.